So rich dad versus poor dad, the life lesson that changed everything. What if your real father, a highly educated, respected man, taught you to work hard, save money and live modestly, I'm to say. But your best friend's dad, who barely graduated high school, right, taught you to make money, work for you, take risks, and never depend on paycheck, right? That was my childhood. At the age of 9, I had two fathers. Okay, so one was my real dad, my poor dad, school principals who believed in traditional education, job security and climbing the corporate ladder. The other was my best friend's Mike's father, my rich dad. Okay, a real man who barely finished school, but I owned dozens of businesses, properties, and never worried about money. Both men were intelligent, both cared deeply about me, but both had completely different views on money, life, and success, right? And I was caught in the middle, forced to choose which path to follow, right? So here, that choice didn't just shape my finance; it shaped my entire future. So here, the chapter 1 is what that. The confusion begins. I remember, standing outside Mike's house one afternoon. We had just finished playing when I saw his dad walk out, calm, confident, with two men in suits following him. He didn't, look rich. He didn't wear flashy clothes, but everyone respected him. When I asked Mike, what his dad, did for a living, he shrugged. Business, a lot of it. That confused me. My own dad here worked long hours, wore a suit every day, and brought home lectures about study hard, get good grades, get a good job. But we were always broke. Vacations were rare, bills were always a problem. The tension at the dinner table was silent but loud. So I asked both dads one simple question: how do I become rich? Their answers. Poor dad said that go to school, study hard, become a doctor and engineer, get a good job, save money, buy a house. Rich dad said school won't teach you about money. Learn how money works, buy assets, start businesses, don't work for money, make money work for you. I was 9 years old, and my entire world shattered into two pieces. So lessons from the rich dad. Rich dad didn't believe in giving handouts. He believed in teaching through experiences, right? So here, he gave me and Mike jobs in his stores for just 10 cents an hour. We hated it. The work was boring. The pay was totally terrible. After 2 weeks, I complained. He smiled and said, that most people quit when things get hard or when they feel, underpaid. That's why they stay poor. But you, if you want to be rich, must learn how to spot opportunity, not complain about problems. That day, he taught me my first lesson, my first real lesson. So the poor work for money, the rich make money work for them. The poor work for money, the rich make money work for them. So I began noticing things. How about run down properties and turned them into profitable rentals. How he paid others to manage his businesses. How he created income even while he slept. How he called it that buying assets. When I told my real dad about it, he shook his head. Real estate business, that's risky. Get a secure job and save. The divide between my two dads grew stronger. Understanding assets versus liabilities. One weekend, his dad grew a simple diagram on paper. Assets here that put money in your pocket. Liabilities is what take money out of your pocket. Then he asked, that is your house an asset? I quickly said yes. My dad always said, owning a home is the smartest thing. But rich dad said no. If your house doesn't earn you money, if it only takes money for taxes, repairs, and mortgage, it's a liability. That's blew my mind. It was opposite of everything I had been taught. He taught me the truth about credit cards, debt, taxes, and how school prepare you to be employees, not entrepreneurs, right? So here the financial trap. As I grew older, I watched my poor dad continue the cycle, paycheck to paycheck, working harder but never getting ahead. He blamed the system, the government, the economy. Rich dad, on the other hand, kept growing, right? He wasn't working harder, he was working smarter. Okay, so he invested in real estate, bought businesses and used debt strategically to build wealth. He taught me about the cash flow, quadrant. E equals to what? That, employee, you work for someone. S equals to what? S equals to self-employed, you work for yourself. Right? B equals to what? Business owner. Others work for you. I equals to what? Investor. Money works for you. That means what? ESBI. Right? So he said, most people live their whole lives in E or S, but true freedom is in B and I. B and I means what? Business owner, and I means investor. Right? So here next is, next chapter 5 is what? The shift in my mindset. By age 30, I had tried both routes. At first, I followed poor dad's path. I went to college, got a job, earned a stable income, but I wasn't free. Every raise was eaten by taxes. Every bonus went to bills. I was stuck just like him. Then I remembered rich dad's advice, if you don't find a way to make money while you sleep, you will work until you die. So I changed. I started buying small rental properties. I invested in businesses. I educated myself financially. I failed a few times, but I learned. Eventually, my passive income surpassed my salary. That was the day. I actually fired my boss. That was the day I fired my boss. Right. Chapter 6 is what? The real meaning of wealth. Poor dad believed wealth meant, having a good reputation, a pension, and a big house. Right. Rich dad believed wealth meant freedom. Time to live on your terms. One died broke, but respected. The other died wealthy and built a legacy that still impacts millions. I learned that, money doesn't solve problems. Financial education does, right? School teach you memorize facts. Real life teaches you to think, right? Security is an illusion. Freedom is the goal, right? So today I am actually grateful. I had two dads, One taught me what to do and the other taught me what not to do. And now I asked you, and I actually ask you that, are you following the path of poor dad, working hard, saving or hoping? I mean to say, are you actually following the path of poor dad, working hard, saving, hoping? Or will you start building the mindset of rich dad, that learning, risking and growing? Because in the end, it's not how much money you make, it's how much money you keep, how hard, it works for you, and how many generations you keep it for. So that the statement is by Robert Kiyosaki, right? So here in this story opens your eyes. So like, share and subscribe for more powerful financial lessons. And remember, it's never too late to shift from poor dad to rich dad thinking, right? So here, why schools don't teach about money. Actually, rich dad once said something I will never forget. They teach you how to read, write and calculate, but never how to manage money, right? Because the systems needs employees, not financially free thinkers, right? This hit me hard. Think about it. We spent 12 to 16 years in school and never learned how to do taxes, invest and build wealth, right? There's no doubt in it. That's totally true. We learned to work for money, but not how to make money work for us. That's not education, that's the conditioning, right? That's not education, that's conditioning, and breaking that cycle starts with awareness. Fear and greed, the real enemies. One day I asked rich dad, one day I asked rich dad that why don't more people become rich? He said, because they are controlled by two things, fear and greed, right? Fear of losing, and here greed for instant rewards, right? Most people stay stuck in the rat race, right? Because they fear taking risks, but ironically not taking risks become the biggest risk of all. They buy things they can't afford with money they don't have, to impress people they don't even like. Meanwhile, those who take calculated risks build freedom. So the books you read shape your future. Rich dad had another rule. Your mind is the greatest asset or your greatest liabilities. Right, liability. So here he pushed us to read books like Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, The Intelligent Investor by Benjamin Graham, here Cash Flow Quadrant by Robert Kiyosaki, The Millionaire Next Door by Thomas J. Stanley. Right, poor dad told us to stick to textbooks. That's the difference. What you feed your mind becomes your reality. Good debt versus bad debt. Your poor dad, believed all debt is bad. Okay, real dad, just a rich dad taught the opposite. Your bad debts, take money from your pocket. Good debts build wealth, if you know how to use it wisely. He used debt to buy rental properties, build companies and expand cash flow. Lesson is what here, that, debt isn't evil. The debt is not, evil. It's a financial ignorance is, right? It's actually a financial ignorance, right? So the final lesson is what here, that, freedom over everything. Money is just a tool. Money is just a tool, just an equipment, right? Here is that I wasn't chasing luxury. He was actually chasing freedom. Freedom to spend time with family, freedom to help others, freedom to wake up without an alarm clock, obviously. Freedom to live life, by design, not by default, right? And that's what I want for you, right? Not just money, but time, purpose, and peace of mind, right? So here the powerful quote to include in our life, that that you are only poor if you give up. You are only poor if you give up. The most important thing is that you did something. Next quote is what? Winners are not afraid of losing, but losers are. Failure is a part of the process of success. There's no doubt in it. It's not the smart who get ahead, it's the bold. Don't work for money, learn to make money work for you, right? So today, ask yourself, will you keep working harder for others or start working smarter for yourself? Will you let fear control you or let education empower you? Will you let fear control you or let education empower you? You don't need to be born rich. You just need to think differently, because success doesn't come from a bigger paycheck. It comes from bigger mindset. So yeah, this is all about the rich dad and poor dad whole story. So yeah.